Welcome to episode 75 of the Forward 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 who are pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50, and your host for today's show. Today I'll be speaking with a woman who spent most of her career in fund development working for a California college. For fun, she just released her first book. DC Frost knew she wanted to be a writer all the way back in elementary school when she created her own script for a Munsters TV show. But she was encouraged to do something more practical to provide financial support. Yet the desire to write never went away. Now in her 60s, DC decided it was time to pursue that lifelong dream of becoming a mystery writer. She had always been a fan of mystery novels. As a tween, she devoured Nancy Drew books. In high school, she fell in love with Agatha Christie novels. DC loves the mystery genre because it allows her imagination to run away to create interesting characters and intriguing situations. That's what she did in writing A Punishing Breed. It's the first in a series of novels featuring a Los Angeles-based detective trying to hunt down a murderer on a liberal arts campus. To tell us more about her book and her new life after turning 60, please welcome first-time author DC Frost to the show. Thanks for joining me today, DC. I really appreciate it. I understand that you became a novelist in your 60s. What prompted you to make this decision?
That is correct. I became a novelist in my 60s. And I think what prompted me is that I used to do a lot of literary fiction, short stories, and I had about 4 or 5 of those published. And I had a mentor who did not believe in genre fiction or popular fiction and was very much against it. So for years, I just didn't really attempt it. And suddenly I found myself stuck writing-wise, and I have a full-time job. I work at a college. And I thought what I love and what I've always loved are mysteries. I loved Nancy Drew when I was 12. I read all of Agatha Christie when I was in high school. And then I have just been reading mysteries. And when I go to a certain place or I go to a certain area, I've always picked up a mystery of a local author. Because I like to see, you in Arizona, I would pick up someone who lived in Phoenix and who had written a mystery about Phoenix, because it's a great way to see how people live there, to see what is going on, what is the culture like, what is that person's life like. So I've always liked to explore people's experiences through genre, through mysteries. And even once we went to the border of Minnesota and Canada, which in this winter becomes like an ice storm. And it's fascinating hearing through the mystery how people negotiate that weather. Either you go into it and you're athletic and you do your skiing and all that, or you stay inside and don't move. So I love exploring those ideas. And I finally thought, I'm just going to write a mystery and see what happens. And that's what I did.
I love the idea that you would read a local author, especially a mystery, for clues about what was going on in that community. I would never have thought of that.
It's really great because I think you're not getting, okay, this is the town, this is the city, this is the country, but what you're getting is an experience of what it's like to live there. And I also recently read a mystery called The Stars Turn Inside Out that takes place in Geneva at CERN, the super collider. And I found that fascinating because what's it like to be a scientist there? What's that experience like working with other scientists? What's that experience of trying to get your research done within a compressed period of time? And it was an incredible mystery. And also so much like a lot of genre fiction about human emotion and connection.
A lot of people don't have any idea how hard it is to write fiction material. It just seems it would be so easy because it's using your imagination, but you have to keep all your characters straight and things like that. How did you do that?
I felt like what I like to do is to take a personality I know and put it in another fictional character that has nothing to do with that person. So I feel like that's helpful in getting to know how that person would react. You're putting them in circumstances they've never been in. And I also don't outline. A lot of people do. But what I tried to do is just to do what I did when I did literary fiction, just let the story take me where it was going to go. And I had read a book that basically takes mysteries into 4 parts. So I tried to really adhere to that sort of structure. There was a structure. And I also read Stephen King's book on writing. I'm a big Stephen King fan, but he's a great writer. And he does not believe in outlining because he believes that magic happens when you just let your imagination go. So I don't know how I get tripped. I do a very vigorous rewrite.
Okay.
And the rewrite does straighten out timeline, naming things or places. And I do a lot of research, which I love. I love research.
How'd you come up with the idea for your book?
So it's called A Punishing Breed, and it's by DC Frost. And it's available on Amazon and bookshop. I really felt when I started my position at Occidental College 20 years ago, that I was entering a very specific cloistered world that I had never entered before. I'd been in nonprofits, but never in that kind of experience where you've got such very clear stratas of the trustees, the administration, the faculty who are there their whole life, their whole careers practically. They're tenured if they're luckily, and not they have to be tenured. The students who go in and out every 4 years, and then the staff. So you've got this really interesting combination of people who are all trying to educate students or get an education and have experiences, students for the first time at West Home. So it is a very clear, to me, cloistered replication of the world that we live in. You get all kinds of different points of view. You've got jealousies, you've got love, and you've got connections. And the other thing that was very interesting to me is that we had a supervisor, a vice president, he had huge bottles of bourbon and liquor stuff right on time, came back from lunch, just absolutely drunk, and also was having openly relationships with a lot of women on campus and someone he was working with. Now, this is before Me Too. This was before any sort of clear policies were in place. And that has since changed. So that was very surprising to me. And I just really thought, wow, this is just a very dramatic situation that might be interesting to read about. So I thought, if I put this in a mystery genre, it's a way to explore that sense of place that I was talking about.
So is he the inspiration for your main character of your mystery?
The behavior was, yes. Right. That behavior being allowed, because I think people don't realize the pressure that people are under at those institutions to raise money, even ones that are doing, pretty well. It's not unlike a for-profit business where money is king. And so that person was raising a lot of money and the behavior was allowed. And so I thought that was also an interesting exploration.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it. So the mystery that you're trying to uncover is what?
The philandering, drinking vice president actually is murdered in his office by a very large sword from World War II that he has on his wall. And he's found by a cleaning woman and a gardener. And the policeman that comes in, the homicide detective that comes in to investigate the case, has actually been there 10 years before, where he actually turned in the gardener for a vehicular manslaughter charge. Ooh. And they're both Latino, the detective and the gardener. And the gardener at one point was a young student full of promise. He was able to go to that school because his mother worked there. And so he had free tuition. And so he had all of this kind of potential that was taken away after this vehicular manslaughter charge. And on top of that, he was pledging to a fraternity, and the fraternity brothers poured liquor down his throat and said, "Oh, you can drive." And then when he was driving and he hit the victim, they ran. Mm-hmm. And so he took the whole charge.
Sounds very interesting. Yeah. For mysteries, people really love those things. The idea of following a story all the way from the start, the crime being committed, to figuring out who actually did it. And it can go into so many different nuances. They're a lot of fun to read. Are they fun to write too?
They are. They're very fun to write. I really enjoyed writing it, and it took on a life of its own. And some of the characters were people that I wanted to represent certain things. There's a neighborhood recluse who's had a very terrible accident that people think he's the other, that he's very strange. And the gardener, Danny Mendoza, and the woman he befriends, who's a student, are people that I just created. But I I loved creating situations where people can fall in love and people can, all the human emotions that we feel and all the things that we have to go through with, whether that's discrimination or whether that is difficulties or things like that.
Did you take any training formally to learn how to be a writer?
I went to UCLA Extension, and I met a very good writing teacher there who asked me to join his writing group. And so I must have studied with, he was a published author. He wrote very, I would say, classic literature, as I said, no genres. And he was a very interesting person, and he was an incredible mentor. The first time I took his class, I got a piece of paper back with all sorts of like notes and writing on it. It was, I would say, what? But by the time I had studied with him for several years, I think I had learned to call down my writing. He always said, kill your darlings, because we tend to fall in love with our writing and it doesn't have anything to do with the plot or the story forward. So those were all really very critical and important things to focus on.
It is hard to write, and doing it with a group of people would be helpful to get that input into what you're writing about. Was this some sort of group or class that you were in for years?
Yes, it was his personal writing group. He made a living being a writer, so that's how he had income. And I met a lot of writers through that. And we would all take the stories that we turned in home, and then every week we would look at one or two of those stories, and it was very intensive. And that I would agree with you that it's very important to have a writing group. There's nothing like someone else, like you think you're writing and going, I don't understand that, or I love this, but I don't understand this. Also, reading out loud what you've written is really important because, you hear it.
And you hear it. That's right. It's also interesting that the people who are in the group would be put in the hot seat every couple of weeks so that they actually, that's intimidating to have somebody rip apart your writing and things like that, but it can be beneficial because it narrows your focus and really helps you identify areas where you're lacking.
It does. And it keeps everyone, I think, pretty honest, but it also keeps them not kind, but I would say civil.
Right.
Situations where people have criticized us and it's, that hurt. I think it's important to be in a writing group that is supportive, but also can be critical.
Is there any trick to picking the right writing group to join? There are writing groups all over the country, I would imagine.
There are. That was a good writing group for me as a beginning writer because it was very structured and he took the time to go line by line and say, this works, this doesn't work. You might turn this over, and they turn it over and there's like all this writing on the back of what works and what doesn't. So I thought that was having almost a Svengali sort of mentor was really helpful in the beginning. And then I think as I progressed, I really enjoyed having a writing group that was more supportive and more helpful and who also just enjoyed genre. Like the writing group I'm in right now, there's someone writing a science fiction. There's somebody writing sometimes a memoir, a YA, young adult novel. So I think you need to have people that are willing to be at least open-minded enough to let those sort of genres happen and explore them.
Before you jumped into writing, you worked at the college. What did you do?
I'm still there. Okay. But I am a gift officer, so I raise major gifts and principal gifts. And I've raised major gifts over that whole entire time, about 20 years. And because of that, I've met so many incredible alumni. And when you're working at a small liberal arts college, you meet alumni that are intelligent, thoughtful, curious. They know how to negotiate the world. And it's really helpful to have those like relationships and people that are feeding your soul and your intellect and your world. So it's been an incredible experience.
That would be a challenge to be in fund development because it's so dependent on the economy and things like that. What prompted you to get into this career?
So I worked for public television, and that's where I first got into it. I loved public television, and I loved Major Gifts because I thought it was just pure. It is pure philanthropy. So I also worked in corporate giving, where you go to different businesses, which used to be bigger years ago. It's not so big now. It's more difficult, and that tends to be more foundation work. But I really always enjoyed just meeting people who love something and who have a passion for something and want to support it. And when I saw that, I was a coordinator working for the major gift officer there. I thought, oh, this is fascinating. This is really interesting. And those people who give, it's not a transactional experience. It's really an experience of falling in love with something or a place and feeling like I can help it. I can be thoughtful. I can be generous. I can support this. And that was something that really appealed to me.
And by major gifts, we are not talking, okay, I'll give you $100, are we?
No, where I am now, a major gift is 100,000, but up to millions and millions. And then we have planned giving, which is bequests. And people that do those things to me are, some people can't because we don't have the resources, but the people that can and who do that, I think are really extraordinary.
Do you find it challenging to be in the workplace over 60?
Yes, I do. I think that the kind of, it's really moved to be more of and as I think the need for dollars increases, and it's also very much based now on metrics, technology. So to me, it's shifting more from that relationship-based experience to more like metrics. How many people have you met? And how many times have you asked? Have you asked, like, people that give $100, we ask $200? It's a little challenging. It's not, it's just shifted.
I would imagine it'd be relatively easier for an older person to be involved in planned giving kind of thing because you're dealing with traditionally older people, except for the millennial millionaires who are involved in social media and things like that.
That's a very interesting point. It is. And I think that you become very aware when you are talking to someone about planned giving, where they are in their life. And it's very interesting because when I first started, most of the time we didn't talk about planned giving till someone was in their 60s or 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Now we actually approach people who are in their 40s or 30s because when you have children, you tend to, that's when you first start thinking about your estate plans these days. A lot of people will start approaching a college at 40 and say, hey, I'm coming up with my estate plan. And we also provide ways that estate plans could look. There's examples and stuff. So there's resources that we have that they can look at. But that has shifted.
Do you see yourself retiring?
I do.
Okay. Is that why becoming a writer is part of this transition into the next chapter of your life?
It happened happenstance, but it seems like a good time to start considering that seriously. And during the pandemic, it just changed my life. I worked from home and I had more time at home to focus. I wasn't traveling, so I had more time to focus on my writing. And the school offered a therapist for 3 months. And I had a friend who was going through a very difficult situation. So I took them up on that. And I told my therapist after we got through the difficult situation that I'm trying to finish this book. And I can't finish this book. And he gave me some great advice. One, he said, the next time I see you in 2 weeks, I want you to promise me you're going to write every day, whether that's 5 days a week or 7 days a week. You're going to make an appointment with yourself and you are going to keep it. And I don't care if it's 5 a.m. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. I don't care if it's 8 o'clock at night. You have to do this for me, for yourself. And I said, okay. So I did, and it changed my life. I finished the book. I became so productive. And also, I think, led into other areas of my life because you have that sense of concentration and you have that sense of, you start saying, oh, I can do this. So I think it really helps you on all aspects of your life to be able to make that appointment for yourself.
Especially when you're writing a book, because you need to maintain that momentum. It is so hard to stop and then have to figure out, all right, where was I? You basically have to reread your book in order to figure out where to pick it up again. So the writing daily is a great advice to give to people who want to be writers. Yes,
it sounds like you're a writer because that's exactly true. If you leave your book for 2 days and go and have a great weekend and you're flying to wherever, it is very difficult to just come back cold and say, oh, here I am. Mm-hmm. I think that is actually, you're right on. You have to be able to be in that book all the time. And I did read during the pandemic, a woman writer was saying that she had 3 kids at home. They were all trying to do their homework and their schoolwork, and her husband was in another room doing his work. She was doing her full-time job, but she was a writer. And she made a promise to herself to delve into her book 15 minutes a day So she could keep connected exactly as you're saying.
A lot of people over the age of 50 seem to be writing books. Why do you think that is? Does everybody have a story to tell?
I do think everyone has a story to tell. I think people tell it in different ways, some through writing, some through art, like painting or drawing. Some, I think, are very skilled at telling their stories verbally and really communicating with people and that connection. So I often, these events I've been doing for this book, I have people come up to me all the time and say, I've always wanted to write a book. And I just say, the way to do it is just to start and to commit to yourself. I think people become very worried that what they put down on paper or on their computer is not perfect. And it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm-mm.
It has to be an idea. It has to be something you believe in and something you can always go back and edit, and you're going to edit and you're going to re-edit and you're going to re-edit the re-edits. Just feel free to put it down.
Exactly. And there's a lot of help available in professional editors to come in there and help people shape their stories and make sure there aren't any embarrassing typos in them either.
That's true. Thank God for that.
Exactly. The one thing that I think helps seasoned citizens in being writers is they have a vast amount of experience in life, their life experience, as well as the wisdom that they've accumulated. It just allows them to apply that to a story, even a fiction story, because they know how things work.
That's true. I think you're right. Hopefully we do grow wiser as we grow older. That's certainly something I'm hoping that I do, that people around me, I can see that. And also talking to people through my work, the perspectives that people can impart when they are older and how they live their life. It's very important. And I also hope that you start to see the complexity of human beings as you get older. You start to see the motivations behind what people do, either positive or negative. And those are really fascinating. And I think as you get older, you start to sense that as you have more and more relationships, some successful, some not. You have children, you have grandchildren, you have friends, people. We go through the whole human experience, births and deaths and people falling ill. And I think someone at Oxy, who was a minister's wife, once told me that dying is part of life, and that's something I have to learn. And that was so profound and so wise as she was in this beautiful home that was for retired ministers. And she, as part of her ministry, was ministering to people who were in hospice. And she said it in a very calm and loving way. And I thought, oh, this is where I want to be someday. This is what I want to be able to accept. And this is what I want to be able to feel. So I think you're right. People who are, hopefully, as we go through life, we learn something, hopefully.
When people get to a certain age, whether it's 50, 60 or beyond, and they want to retire, some of the best advice I've heard is you don't retire, you rewire. And you kind of mentioned that, and that you are embracing new opportunities and passions and basically reinventing yourself.
I love that. Rewire, not retire. That is absolutely brilliant. I think you're right. You carry all the things that you learn in your life, from your job, from your relationships, from your successes and from your failures with you. And if you can take all those things and focus them on something that you're passionate about, that maybe is not what I'm passionate about my work, but not in the same way. I've always wanted to be a writer. I've always written. And then you can apply those things that you've learned to that. That is exactly what it is. It's not retiring. It's rewiring. I love that. I'm going to use that.
Go ahead. I think it's just so fitting because people think, a lot of people, my age at least, are struggling with a sense of purpose. Their entire lives have been involved in a career or a specific job. And when that's taken away or they step away from it, they're lost. They don't know what to do. So do you have any advice for people on how to identify a passion or something that they could do that would give their lives purpose?
I'm going to use myself and my friends as an example. When I was in high school, so I'm going to start with something that you might remember. I don't know if you remember the television show, The Munsters.
Yes, absolutely.
When I was a little kid, I watched The Munsters religiously. I went into my room and I wrote a full script out on my dad's old typewriter, manual typewriter. Here's the script. I didn't know what to do with it, but I did it. I think as a child, you had these tendencies to express yourself, however that is. And I never stopped. And when I was in high school, I would write and play guitar and write songs, but I was always afraid to be public about it. So when I got into college, I became a theater major and I went to Cal State Fullerton. At that point, I'd already gone to junior college. So I never left the theater department. And I had this close group of friends and we were all creative, right? We all loved theater. We all loved expressing ourselves. But reality sits in and I knew like I wasn't ready to be an actress or actor at that point. I just didn't have the emotional ability to accept the criticism and go out and do it. So I went and I created a career. A lot of my friends did. Some of them did become actors and some of them became singers. But what's really interesting is we've all reconnected in our 60s. Every single one of those people are doing something creative. Everyone to a person. I have a friend who is a materials artist. She does textile art. And she's in museums around the world. She had a job that she had to do. I have another friend who is a backup singer. She sings like with Barry Manilow and some other people. I have another friend who's a teacher, but who still plays the guitar and she sings and she joined a singing group. There's just something, that passion that you have when you're a child or that you can't let go of, whatever that is. I don't think that dissipates. I think it stays with you. So I would go back and explore if I were 60 or a bit ready to retire, think, what am I going to do with this time? I first heard you just need to like take a couple of months and do nothing. And think through those things. What brings you joy? For some people, it's cooking, and some people it's baking. Some people it's making pottery. Some people it's writing. Some people it's playing guitar. I play guitar. I'm not a good guitar player, but I love it. I think it's doing those things that have meaning for you. And if you want to share those things, then share them. And I think also when you have that time, you can connect with people who also love the same things that you're passionate about and other people who might want to just see what you're doing. So I would say, look at those first things that you were passionate about that maybe you just tamped down because there wasn't time, where you had to get forward moving. You had to have a career. You had to make money. And we all have to do that. So that's what my suggestion would be. And nothing's off the table. If it's creative and it makes you happy, do it.
If you were writing scripts back in high school and you were passionate about your writing back then, did somebody talk you out of doing that for a career?
Yeah, my father was a football coach and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And they were super concerned that I could go out and make a living. My dad always wanted me to just get married and have a wealthy husband take care of me. And when I was like 10, I was like, and then what's going to happen? I said, someday. And my mom was always like, you have to be able to make a living. You always have to be able to support yourself. Never depend on a man. I think that did have a big influence on me. After college, I thought, how am I going to make money? And I worked through college as a waitress. And that in itself is a very interesting experience. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? So I got a job.
A lot of people have this idea in their minds early in life that this is what I want to do. I want to be a writer. I want to be a musician or whatever. And they're talked out of it and told to explore more practical things.
Yes.
But that desire never really dissipates or leaves. They think about it. They dream about it. And over 50 is the ideal time to bring that back and start jumping into it. What do you think?
I agree completely. And because of my experience, I told our son, who is 27, to find a passion. He was in high school going, I don't know, what I said, find something you're passionate about. Find something that you care about so much that it fills you with joy and just go for it. And he has. He went to a boys' Catholic high school and they were very into sports. He's not a sports guy, but they had a great theater program and they had a great film program. And he went into that. And when he was in college, he just pursued film and he went out and he had internships every semester. He worked for George Clooney's company, Brad Pitt's company, and they were all very nice. Those companies were really great for interns. Red Wagon he worked for. These great companies that they need interns, and he was willing to do it. And now he's working for on the movie A Complete Unknown with Timothée Chalamet about Bob Dylan. And he's pursued it and he's been employed ever since he left college. I think that's one approach. And I felt that was important for him to not say, oh, don't do that, get a job. But on the other hand, if you haven't done it, it's never too late. finding yourself in a position where I have some time now or have a lot of time now, why don't I really focus on those things that made me happy or filled me with passion when I was younger and that I just really felt I didn't have time for?
How important is it for people over 50 to have a creative outlet for what they're trying to do?
So important thing. And when I say creative again, I think it's what makes you happy. My husband loves to cook. He's become like an incredible chef. And when I married him, he could barely like make an omelet, and that makes him happy. And he also, as I said, he's an NPR reporter, but he does a lot of YouTube videos and he really pursues that. And when he was a little kid, his mom said he would pick up like an old recording thing and pretend he was Walter Cronkite. So it's never left. I think it's so important because we start our lives not knowing anything, and we go through our lives and we acquire all of this knowledge, all of these connections, people we love, people we don't. And you're at this age where all of that is in you. And to have something that you can create and put out in the world, and the world is to whoever you define the world as, whether that's your friends or your spouse or you try to reach the larger world. I think those things are important because it's a sense of connection and communication. And I don't think we should stop communicating or connecting just because we're at this part of our lives.
I agree. I think you referred to it as the wisdom of age, and that you encourage people to leverage their life experience for personal and community impact. How do people do that? How can they leverage everything they've experienced to make their own communities better?
I think you can do it in a lot of ways. I think fiction does shine a light on things that sometimes just writing nonfiction doesn't, though I also like communicating situations. I always find it so impactful when somebody has experienced something sometimes devastating or sometimes incredible, and they decide to make that public because they want to communicate that this is an experience that human beings endure and that there's another way out. So I feel that sort of level of personal communication to the larger world is really important. And without it, we're silent. We don't say anything. And I thought what you said is so beautiful and much more eloquent than what I said, but I feel it's so important to be present in this world and to raise your hand and say, hey, I'm still here. I'm viable. I have a lot of things to say. I have things to impart. And I'm really also willing to listen and to take things in and to hear what other people have to say.
That's a very important thing. You do not need permission from somebody else to do this either. If it's on your heart, you just get out and do it.
That's right. You have to give yourself permission.
Correct. Do you have any regrets? If you could turn back the clock, is there anything you do differently in your life?
I've thought of that. Should I have started this? I will say this. I don't, because when I was younger, I thought, oh, I'm going to be a brilliant writer. I'm going to be a brilliant actress. I have to be brilliant. I have to be the best. And there's a hubris in that I think sometimes hurts your soul a bit and other people. So everything that I am, or any of us are, is the long journey that we've made to this point. If I did anything differently, I might not be with my husband. I might not have my son. I might not have had the relationships and the close friends that I've had in my life. So you could go back and say, well, if I did this, maybe I'd have this, or if I did that, maybe I'd have this. But and maybe this is just airy-fairy stuff, but I actually believe things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we find ourselves where we are because it was the choices we made to be here. And those choices, I think we should honor. And are they all right? No, they're not. They're not all right. Are they all wrong? No, they're not. I think sometimes we think they are when we're in the heat of the moment, but I think finding yourself where you are, finding those passions that you care about, finding people you care about, wanting to communicate and being a better person and still growing. I'm growing every minute and every second. We all are. And I want to be open to those things. I want to be open to that growth. I don't think I would go back and change anything.
What are some of the things that you do to grow and push yourself to a new level?
I do try to read a lot. And I've been reading a lot of mysteries, obviously, because I want to know what other people are doing. But I try to be open to listening to another point of view. We just went, my husband and I, to Nashville to a convention, a writer's convention. And there are people who had different political ideas than I did, and they live a different life. And it was so interesting to just be able to talk about what's important. Like they care. Do you care about your children? Of course you do. Do you care about your community? I think being open to finding that humanity and not being closed off and saying my way is the right way, whether that's political or emotional or any other way. I think we need to really be open to listening to people, to have empathy for what's going on in the world and what's going on in our communities and what's going on with our friends and sometimes what's going on with our non-friends. Mm-hmm. I think those are all ways to keep learning and aligning yourself with people that you admire and respect and say, oh my gosh, how are you doing that? What's happening? Being open to those things are really important to me.
I think that's a very good point because the forces of culture are seeking to divide us in so many different ways right now, when in fact we have so much in common. If we just sit down and talk, we'd find out we do love our grandkids and our children and have common dreams to go places and do things.
I agree. I believe that very, very much. And it used to be there's so much, and it's true, there's so much more we have in common that divides us. And I think we have to keep that top of mind as we move.
Sure. So what's ahead for you in the year or two coming up?
I'm writing my second book. It's a series. The detective is going to move forward. I'm about 3/4 through that book, and that will be published in 2026 by my publisher, Red Hen Press, which is a great independent press in Los Angeles. And I think that in the next year or so, I will have a lot more time to focus on that. And I'm looking forward to that.
How can people connect with you if they'd like to follow you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Denise Frost on Facebook, Denise Frost on Instagram. And I also have DC Frost, writer, on Instagram. I was forced to go on TikTok, so I'm out there. I'm at Frosted Writer. And then my website is denisefrost.net.
Very good.
And contact me directly through there.
Thank you so much for sharing this story. I'm glad that you're pursuing this passion of writing and that it's opening up doors for you and at least getting you excited and passionate about life and what's ahead. So thank you again for sharing your story.
Greg, thank you so much. It's been such a nice conversation.
It was fun talking to DC Frost about her new writing career and how it helps give her a new passion to pursue in her 60s. DC adopted a unique approach to mystery writing in that she tapped into her own life experiences and familiar surroundings to create believable characters and interesting storylines. She also has enough confidence in her writing that she never outlines her chapters. She just lets the ideas and dialogue flow from her mind to her keyboard. To build her skills as a writer, DC attended a college-level class where she had a fabulous teacher. He invited DC to join his private writers group. The teacher and students would create each other's work. It was a daunting process, but worked to sharpen her writing skills. DC thinks everyone over 50 has a story to tell, whether it is about their own life, a fictional character, or a topic they are passionate about exploring. The key to developing a writing habit is to write something every day and be willing to accept feedback from others. Older writers also have a delightful perspective toward life in that they can see the complexities involved in relationships. They have had their share of successes and failures. More importantly, they know how things work, and all that comes out in their writing. It's also essential that seasoned citizens have a creative outlet in their lives, whether it is writing, performing, cooking, or something else that gives them a reason to get up and do something productive every day. As they get older, seasoned citizens need to look for ways to leverage their life experiences for personal and community impact. There are countless opportunities for them to do just that. DC is already halfway through her second mystery novel, which she expects to release in 2026. To follow her writing journey or to connect with DC, visit www.denisefrost.net. She is also active on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Her book, A Punishing Breed, is available on Amazon and in other bookstores. That's all I have for this week's show. If you'd like help in identifying a purpose for your life or to get help planning your next steps, I'm offering a complimentary brainstorming session to members of the Forward from 50 Facebook community. For details, connect with me on Facebook or visit www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thanks for listening, and if you like this show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.